He had COVID for 10 weeks and he recovered, but he's 78.
I had a 40-year-old friend in Ottawa, actually featured in the Toronto Star and the Ottawa Citizen. It was touching. It was guy. He runs, he works out all the time. Too young. They've been on a trip.
The 3rd of March, and I remember Nelson. So I said,
well, my virtual other day, I don't know what we were talking about. And I was like, are you no? I don't know how you got it. White King. Yeah. That seemed a little bit.
yes, that's right.
Oh, sorry. My bad. Anyways, this meeting started to. So we'll call this meeting to order at 8:30. Any declaration of interest or any general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the adoption of the minutes. So I have a motion moved by Wendy Merkley, seconded by Donna Dempsey, that the June 10th, 2020 peer meeting minutes be adopted as circulated / amended. Did anybody have any errors or omissions in the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, and it carries. We have quorum, right? Thought I'd better check. I thought so. Okay. So we'll get right down to the business of why we're here, and that is the 2021 budget presentations. So Kim, do you want to preface how we're going to roll this out?
Absolutely. Still getting used to the new microphones. So I guess today what we're going to do is go through each of the presentations. I know 2020 has been an absolute anomaly in terms of our ability to kind of deliver on some of the things that we were committed to. I will admit that's happened here, and I'm sure it's certainly impacted your organizations as well. Following the presentations today, Kate is actually our treasurer is watching on the live stream so that she can follow along. And so she and I will sit down after the fact as we kind of continue to work through the development of our budgets. So we have our templates, which will be due back in draft format within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So at that point, what I will do is I will communicate with each one of you what we're proposing to include in the budget so that you're aware. So if there's anything perhaps that we've missed that you want to come back and lobby for if we weren't able to include, or something that perhaps you think of in another 8 days' time, I cannot believe we forgot that we still have that little bit of wiggle room and whatnot. Council will be meeting in here, a special meeting of council in early November. They will have in front of them the budget that staff have put together. So you're welcome, of course, always to watch that via live stream. We can watch at that point and see exactly what will be included or not. And then, of course, I will do some follow-up after the fact just to confirm what's included in the budget. I know we've had some hiccups along the way, so we're really going to try to make sure that we nail it this time. So that's kind of, I think, what we're looking at. I will kind of get ahead of everything and say that this year, budgeting is going to be tough for staff. We're being very cognizant of the hangover of COVID, so to speak. Preparation for any backward steps we may take. And so we're really being fiscally responsible this year in terms of developing our budget. So I think that about sums it up at this point, and I'm excited to see what we're going to hear from you folks today. I'm particularly interested in what your plans and activities are for 2021, how we might adapt what we're working on so that can we still carry on with COVID, and how is that going to maybe impact our organization so that, and it's on the agenda later on, but so that we can facilitate grant opportunities and other mechanisms of support as we work through 2021.
Just before you go any further with the presentations, Madam Clerk, the meeting that's scheduled for budget in November, that's a live stream, but people can, we're not allowing the public into the building during those presentations right now, during council meetings, committee of the whole, but obviously still allowing questions. So I'm assuming that budget presentation, we will do the same.
Yeah, so we'll do it via webinar. So anyone that wishes to participate, please let me know. I can add you on as a panelist, or at the very least, you can be an attendee, and then once you have any questions or anything to that nature, we can recognize you. You can raise your hand. We can recognize you. You can ask your question and any follow-up or anything like that. So it will be done via webinar. It is November the 19th. I believe the start time is 9 a.m. But between Kim and myself, we'll keep you posted as to if you wish to be a panelist or merely an attendee, and then we can promote you. Or
I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that even though it was via webinar, people can still participate and then ask their questions through the chat and what have you. So we're getting better as time wears on with these Zoom meetings, so that we can make sure that there's still active participation and that everybody is recognized and their questions are dealt with. Okay, sorry about that. I just wanted to clarify to be sure. Go ahead, Susan. The password? Oh. Capital L, capital G. So the first presentation is Lansdowne, is it? Okay, so just a housekeeping item. The microphones were refurbished in the early spring. So since we haven't been here, all you have to do is touch it and not hold it like we used to have to. So touch it and it's on, touch it, it's off. And the microphones seem to be much more clear than they were before, and they seem to be better we sanitize them afterwards. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I get the little spritz. So we'll go with Lansdowne first and foremost.
Hello, you can hear me. Wow. Thank you for all this. And yes, it has been a very unusual last number of months. We're all trying to be flexible in how we deal with things and creative. Just want to go through some of the quickly some of the achievements. And I'm very shy with words, so this won't take very long. Tree lighting and one of a kind showcase. We usually like to put that one on, and that one is growing. We're doing well there. we won't be having it this year, unfortunately, because of the obvious. So we have been into sort of a maintenance mode at the moment. Preservation of the heritage banners using a plastic coating is giving them a significant extra life. And at the moment, we're in partnership with, I think it's the Historical Society, is it? To do some mural maintenance. It has shown a little bit more wear than we expected, so we're putting some work into that. Because of the COVID thing, we have assisted TLTI in the upkeep of flower beds, hanging baskets, and planters. And that's been a challenge because a lot of us are either not capable of doing the physical work or not capable of doing the physical work. So it's a challenge. It's been cut back a little bit, but still the town looks great. We did install a new sign, a replacement sign beside the Fresh Mart. We all call it the "You Are Here" sign. And I do see people stopping and, wow, this is where we are. Okay, now we can find where we really need to go. And hopefully that's in town, which is one of the reasons for it. We have helped the Rural Aid Center, the food bank, with a couple $1,000 have given toward the food bank to help with that, because a lot of people have signed in on that don't normally need help. Our website, we're getting all sorts of hits. Donna has been really on top of the upkeep of it, and is finding and putting some new information on it, and we're getting hits from all sorts of the place. So it is beginning to show a use, and we're getting feedback from it, which is, it takes time, but we're happy with that. 2019 events such as the plant sale, we do a lot of events, Laffer. So our plant sale, textile festival, summer garden tour, horse festival, etc. We've been mapping where our customers come from, which to us is very important, in that we're not just preaching to the crowd, preaching to the choir. We'd like to be able to bring in people from outside the area, bring in outside money and support and knowledge of us being here. So we put together a stick your pin where you come from sort of thing on the map. And we're getting naturally from Lansdowne, but as far away as Toronto, Kingston, Gananoque, Athens, Brockville, now the further ones, Prescott, Smith Falls, Merrickville, Kempville, Ottawa, Western Quebec, and Upper New York State, and everywhere in between. We started doing that with the Horse Festival, the first one, and had a very good turnout. I think it was about 1,700 people turned out for the first Horse Festival. And the second one, a similar amount of people, but they were more widely spread. So the news and good thoughts about that festival is traveling wide. So we're well pleased with that. Donna has been pushing our scarecrow sightings. So outside you'll be seeing scarecrows popping up here and there. It gets people involved, and it's a socially distancing event, so anyone can have fun with that. Stick your humorous thing up on some pole somewhere in town and wait for the laughs. Administration funding of $2,000, and we thank you every year for that. That really helps us deliver activities and the liability insurance, especially for a group that puts on as many events as we do. As we've spoken before, the liability insurance was a major stepping stone for us to be able to find and actually step on. So that helps, and thank you again. We're getting there. We have not had any meetings due to the COVID, so it has all been through email, Facebook, whatever, and even if I actually answer the phone, it'll be meetings that way. We have canceled all our events. We're trying to figure out whether or not to do a Christmas event somehow without people being closer than 6 feet. So that's in the works. Not sure how that one is coming, but we'll see. Our major fundraiser, Laffer makes its main funds off the plant sale that we do every spring in May. And naturally, we had to cancel this year's event. So anything we're doing right now is out of our bank account. So it's gradually going down as a result. But, you know, that's why we make money and try to keep a little bit back so that we can use it in harder times. Let's hope the harder times don't last too much longer, or else we'll be looking for other ways of making funds. Final page. Again, the activity and description, administrative support, as I said before, insurance, paperwork, papers, supplies, that sort of thing. Township helps us with each of the groups with that, and again, thank you. That's the third one. Ongoing beautification. We didn't put a figure by that because that is up and down every year. We're not sure what it is, but we will do what is necessary, whether it's planters, pots. We've put out brand new planters this year, replaced the old wood ones, and they look really good. They're not going to rot away in 10 years. Our website maintenance cost with One Idea Incorporated. It's not a cheap little thing, but as I said earlier, we are getting some good hits from further afield than our neighbors. And that costs us $1,200 a year to keep that going. And we got a weekly report. It's a weekly, isn't it? Weekly report from them on upkeep and whether it's been hacked or whatever, and the number of hits we get, which is kind of interesting. This year, Township has helped us greatly with a storage trailer. We were having all our lovely items and precious items in various basements and garages and my kitchen and that sort of thing. So I am now able to maneuver around my kitchen without stepping over digging devices, weed whackers, and what have you. And so thank you for the trailer. That really helps us a lot. It is something that we are spending the rent. We have it down at the corner of Reynolds and Highway 2, and the rental for that is $600 a year to keep it there. The last two things on here are just things that we just keep it mentioned all the time, is signage for Jerry Park, a request from 2020 to indicate playground, splash pad, ball diamond, soccer pitch, pavilion, parking facilities, washrooms, etc. There are a number of us who are in and about town during the summer do get questions from people coming in. Is there a place that we can let the kids out and play? They don't know where to go to find this. So I say, well, drive this way 300 feet and turn left and then turn right, sort of thing. Yeah, it works to an extent, but that's only the people that ask. There are no doubt people who have no idea what little piece of gold we have hidden back behind all the houses. Staff support. You guys are wonderful, all of you, and thank you so much for all the work that you do to help us. You do put in a number of hours, and we do hope that that is able to be budgeted further for our help, because we couldn't do a lot of the things we do without your support and advice along the way. And thank you for that. And some of the things, again, are events, the Lansdowne Fair. That's not a Laffer thing, but we're all in things together. Christmas tree lighting, celebration, textile festival, horse festival, and various things and sundries in between. So without going any further, because there's nothing else written on my list, thank you. and any questions, I guess.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Laffer? Go ahead, Ms. Goodman.
I just have two really quick questions, Peter. I'm wondering what the impact of not being able to host the plant sale is, if you're willing to share that. Otherwise, if perhaps you could provide me with that figure, like how much you would generally bring in that one particular fundraising event.
Do you want to do that privately or publicly, Donna? I'm sorry. Yeah, doesn't bother you. Yeah. Over the last, I believe it's 3 years, we have made approximately $8,000 each time.
Much? Sorry.
8,000.
Holy smokes.
We are right now one of the biggest plant sales in the area. Athens used to be the one to compete with. Now we are, and we'd like to keep it that way, but that requires a lot of work and a lot of gardens to pick from. So think of that for next May, and it's probably, 150 days until the plant sale now.
I know, I love watching the annual countdown every year. My second, and this is more of a comment than a question, and I think it's, sorry, more of a comment than a question, and it may be applicable to each one of you, is with regard to some of the park signage. It is still, when we went through, as we've kind of looked at our financial impact from COVID, we have made a few cuts to the budget. And so we had a pretty substantial signage budget for this year. We had included $25,000. We've cut that back this year. And so we actually have very preliminary draft designs for park signage as it relates to risk management. So rules, for example, the little signs that you would post by a play structure, multi-purpose sport court rules and whatnot. Depending on how things move ahead, if there's any wiggle room, we'll continue with that. But I did want to let you know that you may be seeing some signage in our parks. I know I've got one in particular for the Rockport Customs House with the rules and whatnot. So that's not totally dead in the water. I just wanted to reassure you. It's just, given COVID and our reduced staffing here right now, it's just not happening quite as quickly as I'd like. And I'm sure you folks are getting tired of hearing that, but that's where it sits nonetheless.
Just to, actually, that opens the door. And before we go any further with the presentations, is maybe just to clarify to everyone here around this table. Coming into, we're almost 2 years into this term of council, and we have we've made major strides as far as the financial side of things. And I know it doesn't maybe seem like that on the outside, but having a treasurer like Kate Tyndall on our staff and as a senior manager has changed the way we look at budgeting. And you're going to be hearing a lot about asset management going forward. And that's how we are going to frame our budgets going forward, because in the past we had a list, like an Excel spreadsheet of things that we were responsible for, if you will, but no real cohesive way to ensure that we were saving enough dollars to make sure that we could refurbish, maintain, whatever. It was very ad hoc, the way that we were doing it. It was like, well, I think it's going to cost, I'll use the Ivy Lee dock as an example. It's going to cost $500,000 to do that. Based on what Rockport Customs has done, it's about $500,000 to refurbish a dock like that. So that's fine for us to say that now, but if you put it into terms that it needs to be replaced in 10 years, we need to keep in mind the inflation and what have you. So when we're setting up budgets and talking about reserve funds and talking about having capital projects, and this would be anywhere in the municipality, that's how we've done it up until now. It's like, well, I think in 10 years that thing might cost $600,000, but there's no real scientific way of doing that. The asset management program that we have purchased and are installing is a very robust and intricate system that clearly defines what the cost of things are now and what they will have as far as what they should cost in the future, so that we can save and plan appropriately. One of the things that when we first were elected that we fell down on, we approved a structure to be erected here in the village of Lansdowne for $250,000, and we didn't have the money in the reserve fund we shouldn't have put it up. From a financial fiscal responsibility, it was something that was planned by the previous council, and we made an assumption the way that things, and this is when we had a part-time treasurer 2 days a week, so maybe not the same attention to detail that we have now. And so we took a lot of heat for this last year when we had to replace $250,000 in a reserve fund that was overdrawn. Essentially, we built it on a line of credit, and it should never have happened. But the way that our budgeting was done, like I said, ad hoc, we weren't given the right information to make the best possible decision. So we have that. We've gone back to square one. But the other major thing, and this is no surprise to anybody sitting around this table, we generally count on $1.5 million coming from the casino every year to be put into reserves to fund these capital projects. As everyone knows, the casino has been closed and will reopen on the 28th of September, which we're grateful that they're reopening at all, I'll be honest, because they have, it's a private business now. They have every right to not open for another few months or maybe never. Like, they have that choice. They're private business. It's not government. It's not, we don't have a vested interest in their business. So that 1.5 million we count on every year means that we don't have that money to put into reserves for capital projects. It's got to come from somewhere. So when staff are talking about the budgeting process and how we look at it, we're having to find ways to be much more efficient on the operating side so that we can fund our reserves, because the 1.5 million we've counted on to fund those reserves pretty much evaporated overnight. So I'm not saying that taxes are going up. I'm not saying, but when you hear the staff talk about us scaling things back, this particular year we had not an emergency meeting. We had a meeting that was specific to budgeting, and we asked the staff to come to us to tell us what we could delay, what we could defer, what we could cut out altogether. And the staff came forward, and this had a direct effect on all of you, because we didn't hire our summer students. We had 2 out of the 6, and we received numerous complaints about grass cutting and those sorts of things, which I can appreciate. People are used to things being the way they are, the way they have been. And due to COVID, we were even receiving messages from landscaping companies saying, you shouldn't be doing it at all. We are told that we can't run our business, so how can the township maintain? Oh yeah, we had lots of things happen. So anyways, the reason I get into these sorts of details is because whoever might be watching this and the conversations that we have around this table, it doesn't mean that we aren't community minded and not wanting to support local initiatives, but we have to be, like Ms. Goodman said, fiscally responsible over the long term, because the COVID hangover that it will actually likely not rear its ugly head as badly until another 6 months to a year, as businesses continue to try to hang on, or not in some cases. We have a lot of seasonal based businesses. Some of them did well during the season because we had a good bump on the tourism side, but some of them nowhere near what they would have had. So, we get concerned about those people surviving in their businesses and being able to pay taxes, because the commercial tax rate is considerably higher than the residential rate. So anyways, and I bring this up so that everybody knows that we didn't just say, well, we're not just spending money because we don't want to. It's because we're trying to prepare for the storm that's coming after, not right now. So anyway, so sorry to be doom and gloom, but I appreciate everybody's prudence during their presentation and being aware, but also to underscore, I appreciate every single person who helped to maintain flower beds and to maintain the villages to be what they are, because they did look great despite the fact that we had limited resources out there working on that. So thank you for your input and your help with that. So next on the line is RDG.
Okay, well, we started to write this. I have to admit that as a village group, we stopped meeting, and the enthusiasm, I listened to Peter, and the enthusiasm he showed far exceeds the enthusiasm that we felt in our village. So congratulations, Peter, for maintaining your enthusiasm, because I don't think that happened for Rockport Development Group. That said, we had some pretty dedicated people who did the flowers and made sure the gates looked good, and yeah, and our gate was knocked down in the middle of the summer. I don't know how many of you saw it, but it was taken out by a big truck with a piece of heavy equipment on it that didn't lower the equipment far enough, and it hit the bridge and took it out. Right in the middle of the summer, they agreed, though, I believe. They took it away, they fixed it, they brought it back, and they installed it, because I never once heard from the township that anything about it. It just got taken down, taken away, and they brought it back.
Just as an aside, the people who had hired the equipment operators to come in called us 10 minutes after it happened, said, we're taking it down, we'll fix it, don't worry about it, it's on us, it's our mistake, it's whatever. And literally, it looks just like it did before it left.
It does,
It's perfect, and we made sure that it met all the standards for safety and everything else, but they were the ones that footed the bill, so the taxpayer did not, just so you know.
We were hoping you were involved, because everybody kept calling me, and I didn't have a clue what was going on, other than it got hit, I saw it, and then it was gone. And then one guy came in and said, do you have the letter R? Everybody says Wendy probably has that R. I didn't have the R, but I knew where it was.
I kept saying that it was like, you just had to say it with a Boston accent. We're going to Rockpat.
Yeah. Well, that's not what other people were saying.
I know, but I was trying to put a good spin on it.
Anyway, it's back up, and it's just like it never happened. And that was sort of our excitement. We were really worried it was going to look like that for a long time. They were very good they did it very quickly. We did have dedicated people who looked after the flowers. We were fortunate on the park in the Rockport Customs Park. I don't know how many of you made it to see it this year, but we had benches donated. They were all paid for. All we had to do was finish off the installation. We had flower pots that were donated. We had tables that the Kinsman and Gannoque donated. It all got installed, and it looked so inviting. It was full all summer long. People were there all the time. Boats, cars, bicycles, people walking, people coming over in the evening. It was just really, it was what it was supposed to be. And even though it hasn't been resurfaced, and we worry about that, it was exactly what it was supposed to be, which was good, because we couldn't really do much, and we couldn't put the ambassadors there, we couldn't open the building. The only thing people complained about was there was no garbage can, and we said that's intentional, because if you have a garbage can, it will only overflow. So you bring it in, you take it out. And we really, a couple times we've gone and cleaned up some garbage, but it hasn't been bad at all. People have been very respectful. So we are really pleased. We did have to cancel all our fundraisers. There's a note going around right now. I'm getting withdrawal. Didn't have the golf tournament. We didn't have the spring dinner. We did none of the events that bring us together. Even just having them brings us together, and we're not getting together. People are not doing that. So we're very thankful for the $2,000, though, because the insurance was there for RDG, even though we didn't have any events. And the most of where the rest of it goes is communication. And we hired a website person who redid our website, and he's awesome. I send him something, and within 4 or 5 hours, if he's working, it's when he gets home, but it gets updated. And if you look at our website, he keeps it very fresh. He finds out what everybody's doing at every location and keeps it updated in terms of what's going on. So that is money well spent in terms of communication. And my understanding is that's what it was really for, was communication and insurance. And yeah, it costs us more than that, and when, like you, our bank account is doing this, but because we're not doing any fundraising. We also had the mural repainted. The mural's 10 years old, that mural on the barn of the boat building history, and it was really starting to show. And the guy came along, of whom everybody knows from Bromphone, his name just went right out of my head. Sheridan, Dave. Dave came and he said, Wendy, it really needs doing. And I said, yeah, you were going to do it last year. He says, I know. So he says, I'm going to do it this year. And so he gave me a price, and I just said yes. So if RDJ doesn't want to pay it, I've already paid the bill, so because it's on our barn. But I'm pretty sure RDJ is thrilled to have it done, and we'll find a way. So it looks much, much better. I don't know if you've driven by, but it's so fresh. It just looks like it just pops again. We're thankful for the guys, the money and the working together with everybody for watering the flowers. That worked really well. He was there every morning, or two mornings a week, early in the morning, watering. So, you know, as nervous as we were about whether this is going to work, because the township watered every day, 5 days a week, and he was coming twice a week, it did work, and our flowers looked good. So that cooperation was really good. So whoever found him, and I think it was you, and the money from the township to pay him, I think was a very good maneuver at a time when we were all wondering, what are we going to do? So thank you for that. We're a bit concerned about the strat plan, and it's in there that we don't know, and we realize there's things in there and there's no money to do anything. So we're a little concerned about that. But our makeshift parking lot at the top of the parkway has been packed. And what people have gone to this year when they couldn't do other things is they've gone to boating and RVing. And that parking space, it's our default parking lot, is packed every weekend. And the boat launch is going steady Saturday and Sunday mornings, and in the evenings, boaters are out in full force. We should need to analyze that, I think, in terms of our strat plan and how important that boat ramp is to the economy of Rockport. The restaurants and the marinas, that boat ramp is key. And I know there's been a lot of talk about it, but if I stress one thing, it's the boat ramp is really, really critical to Rockport. I can't see that, but, and I didn't bring a copy of it. So I believe we put in there the parking and the boat ramp, knowing full well that those are things on your list that are not going to be a high priority, but we don't want to lose sight of them. So I know, and I know people that will have different perspectives in our village, but to me, they are the key things, that and washrooms. The one big issue, and I don't know how the rest of you found it during the summer, but people were looking for washrooms, and washrooms were an issue everywhere. And of course, the boat line didn't open, and we've always sent people to theirs that they had open, and they didn't open until July. So that washroom wasn't open. There are no other washrooms in the village. So it was an issue for us, and it's something we should think about. I know that we've asked this question and never really had a discussion about it, but I think as a group, we should have a discussion about porta potties and where they're allowed and where they're not and how they can be used. Because I think there's a whole mixed bag of thoughts around the use of porta potties. I know they're used for events. Some places they sit there all year, other places they're not. So I would like to have that discussed sometime, because I've asked the question on numerous occasions and I've never had an answer.
I don't believe it's in any of our bylaws in regards to how that's regulated, whether it's for short-term, long-term use, that sort of thing. So it warrants a discussion. I don't think that's something we can't.
I think it would be good for all the villages, frankly. When a major place like the boat line shut down, we were in really, and people were really nervous about letting people use their washrooms, rightfully so. So washrooms remains a big issue. We did get our interpretive sign done, which was in the funding that we got last year from the grants, and it looks wonderful, and it's on the custom stock. So we had that installed. There's a picture of it coming up, and that helps. It's amazing how many people do walk around and read those signs all the time, the interpretive signs. So we got that part done. I can't remember what that is, and I can't read it. Oh, yeah. Our next ambition around history, and we think history is really what brings people and what holds people. And if you have been to the custom stock, you'll realize there's a fence between the park and the boat line. And it's overgrown with all kinds of weeds and Chinese elm and all kinds of stuff. What we want to do is put a history wall along that side. It'll keep that division so everybody doesn't come off the boat. It'll get rid of the chain link fence and the weeds. And then over the years, as we capture murals and things, and I think of it like the wall out here, when you walk in, where does everybody go? They go look at that wall. And a history wall, and then you can't keep putting up interpretive signs everywhere, but you put a history on the wall. So fishing, and you might then do another one on scuba diving, and what the history will be from what our generation and the next generation. And there will be a place to put new things on that wall. But first we have to design the wall. I'm talking to the guy who did our signs. You'll notice our kiosks were done. That was the other thing that was in our budget. And the maps, you couldn't even read anything on them. They'd been there 10 years as well, and they were really faded. And so the money got spent, and we had it redesigned. And it was interesting how much the businesses had changed. When we had to redo those signs, Cagers was on there. Things that had come and gone, and new things. And so there's new maps, and you see people standing looking at them. What we didn't do was the back side of them. We used to have plastic things for flyers to go in, and now we need to redo the back. And so that's in there, is what are we going to do on the back? And those plastic things don't work, so we're working with a guy to come up with an idea. And we're thinking of putting a picture and then slots and cover them somehow so you can slide them in rather than have it fit an 8 by 12. Anyway, that's what part of that money is for. So the history wall would be on customs, and RDG, whatever we can get, we will find a way to do some fundraising to get that started. And we've got a couple ideas, but it's going to have to be things like raffles online and auctions online and stuff like that. So, and what was the third one? Of course, flowers, because flowers we have to. Now, there's always a big issue about the big long flower bed beside the sidewalk to nowhere, because that is a massive flower bed, and when it looks bad, it reflects on everybody. And it is township flower bed, not our Rockport Boatline flower bed, so they don't look after it. So RDG looks after it. So we always have to put more mulch in there, and we always have to do stuff with that one. So that one and the gates, and I think our gates flower beds look really good. And I know she will hate me for this, but Diane Phillips pretty well single-handedly kept care of those and took her weed eater up there, and then we went up and trimmed the brush, and I hauled it to the dump because it really does get overgrown and comes out on the road. But Diane deserves the credit. She went up there and went at it, and she planted it, and she weeded it, and she took care of the flowers on the customs for Force. So she was our champion flower person. Those pictures are things that we're proud of what we've done in terms of them installing the benches, and there's the interpretive sign, and those stone planters are from years gone by. They came from the money that we put into the budget, and they just make Rockport unique. And everybody took one this year and owned it to water the flowers. So that's what we did. Each person on RGG owned a planter, and they had the responsibility to keep the flowers watered and trimmed. So yeah, we think that looks pretty good. So our aspiration we'd like to get started on the history wall, and then that would be our focus over the next probably 5 or 10 years, is completing it. And I think that's it. I wish I was as energetic about things as you are, because as a business owner, going through this, and in March I was worried about flooding and COVID both hitting us at once. So I am very thankful that we didn't get flooded, and that the water behaved itself, and that all we had to deal with was COVID.
It's a sad state of affairs when we're glad that we only have to deal with COVID, unfortunately. But I too share your enthusiasm for the fact that we did not have high water this year. It would have been a compound fracture that I don't know we would have been able to surmount. So the good news is the water continues to go down. Maybe not at the rate that we need it to, but it's still lower than what it was last year at this time.
I did have somebody in talking to me about the water, and the reason that they're letting so much out right now is Lake Erie is still extremely high, and they are predicting flooding for next year, is what I heard. I don't know if you've heard that.
Well, maybe that's a conversation for a different day, but at the same time, I've heard both, that we're going to be okay, and then we've heard that there could be possible flooding as well. But I know there's a lot of talk about what is it? How there's a very specific term going around the L limits or something, but that at the moment that the shipping season ends, that they just basically let the water out. And let it go as fast as they can before the ice freezes, because that was the other benefit we had. We had a mild winter, which meant that it didn't freeze over, so there was less chance of an ice jam, which is why they have to control the water that's going out of there. But most people don't understand how the Great Lakes system works, and how the money I said the money flows down, the water flows down. Same sort of thing. But the Great Lakes are at their all-time highs, and
Still.
the water still needs to come through the straw, which
Yeah.
is the St. Lawrence River.
And that's the problem, the funnel. I mean, they're so full, but still got to get by us before it can get out.
They're actively through the Great Lakes Active Management, so it's called GLAM. They are meeting consistently and regularly. And I know that there is a group of activists that have been appointed to that board, which have our interests at heart. So we're very thankful that they included them, at the very least, to make sure that our needs are met, hopefully. So, thank you.
We do appreciate what the township is going through. I just want to, I have defended the township many times when people were complaining about things in terms of, I think there is an understanding that, I mean, we all knew for years that the casino money, we are one of the richest townships around. We are blessed to have had the casino for 10 years doing what it's done. I understand asset management from when I was on council, and I knew back then that we were supposed to be setting aside money so that you could maintain the assets that were on your books and figure out when they were going to expire, if they would expire, and if it was maintenance or if it was replacement, and that asset management. So, I mean, your provincial tax, isn't it? The gas tax that we get back, the township gets back, was dependent on getting asset management in place back when I was on council.
We still receive the gas tax payment, but there was a sort of a drop dead date put in by the province that we had to have an asset management plan. Please know that we had asset management in place as it was, but it was a very basic and rudimentary system. This system that our treasurer has been trained on, we sent her away to get the training. She's already started doing that, gathering the information and taking what we had. But like, I'll be honest, we had things that we owned that weren't on that list at all. Like dry hydrants. Kim Goodman and I talked about this the other day. You know, dry hydrants, nobody thinks about them as being a township asset. Well, Dry hydrants are the things you see back at Charleston Lake. There's one at Furnace Falls. There's one
Fox Run.
and there will be one in Rockport once
There
the
was
Hucks-
supposed to be.
Yeah,
I figured that got axed too.
No, that one has to be done when they go to any further development. They have to put that in at Hucks. I believe it's one of the contingencies.
Because at one time the chief talked about putting one in at Customs.
Yeah,
But it's going at Hucks with that development.
I believe so. We can clarify that with Marnie. But those dry hydrants allow our fire department to go and get a vast amount of water very quickly. And no one thinks about that as something that we need to maintain. But if we have fire hydrants in the village of Lansdowne on the water system, it's the same thing. They have to be maintained. And if they fail, they need to be maintained. They might last 30 years, that's fine, but maybe they need replacement after 30 years. Something small and simple, but it's just another indicator of that we have so much and you don't think about it. You just don't think of it as something that needs to be included in a long-term, long-range plan, but everything needs to be included. Everything we touch, everything we're responsible for, everything from a risk point of view. So the new program, though, and I would challenge all of you to listen into our training next Wednesday night. We have a special training that our treasurer is training all of council in regards to how this program is going to roll out. It has capabilities where we can have purchase orders and from a financial point of view, we can manage, like when our public works staff are out and they could have an iPad and say, here's the pictures, this is what needs to be done, we need to order X, Y, Z, and it's all put into the plan. So everything speaks back to everything else and it's all documented, because that's the other thing, as you well know, everything's got to be documented. Pictures, invoices, emails, all of that stuff. So it's a very interesting system, and it's going to take us a while to get it all in place, because it's going to mean that we're all going to have to change our behavior about how we do things. But that's why the training on next Wednesday night might be interesting for any of you. So I won't yammer on any longer. I'll let whoever's next go. Sealy's Bay.
Good morning. It's nice to see all of you. As Wendy said, we've missed being together and with our own group, so nice to see you guys. Yes, Sabara, so much of what you've already talked about, the impact that we've had. Just some of the things that we did this year, our AGM last fall, the topic was on commercial hemp farming. It was interesting because we attracted a large group of area farmers, and we've never really attracted area farmers to an AGM before. So just to note that if you have an interesting topic, you do have people show up. And so these farmers, I'm not sure this project's going to go anywhere, but they certainly got introduced to Sabara. So it was interesting. We did a movie night in conjunction with the library. We feel strongly about our library, so we're trying to support that. I was going to mention about village cleanup in March or April. Kim, Kara, and Trish deserve a lot of credit for jumping in on these things. At least they got us the bags, and we can recruit the volunteers, and we got village cleanup. So it's one of those examples with if the township staff can give us the bare essentials, sometimes we can pull through. We've mentioned the flowers before. It worked this year, and thanks to Donna for the Dugwood connection. It's just, it would be nice if we don't have to do that next year, because our volunteers have, lots of things to keep them going. Sabara does get the challenges that the township has, and so we're mindful of that. Sabara, we didn't meet during the spring, but then we got onto Zoom, and in fact we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago. We were able to social distance, and that was good. There's something about meeting in person and some good vibes. We canceled the Red Canoe Fest that we would have had in June. We've been asked to host small halls. Small halls was just, I think, going to do Sealy's Bay because the community hall is the largest venue and they could space out 50 people. So they asked, their plan was just to do 3 nights, consecutive nights in October. So we talked about that at our last meeting and we decided that we weren't prepared to host that event. You know, when we look at, you know, cleaning the washroom after every use, we thought, yeah, no way. So I think Small Halls is actually going to go ahead and do that. They're going to, I don't know how they're going to pull it off, but there's some kind of artist, musician that will be there for 3 nights. So you can watch for that. Our main fundraiser is Storyfest, and we had that scheduled for November 15th. We're excited. Jim Raffin is just releasing his latest book called Ice Walker, about a polar bear, and we always want to support Jim. He has provided Sabara with thousands of dollars worth from those story fests. We've decided not to hold it in the community hall November 15th. You know, we have a dedicated crowd, but an audience, but we don't want to expose them to anything. So it's up to Jim now if he's going to do it virtually or if we're going to postpone it, which brings the fact that $2,000 is critical. Our bank accounts are going down too with insurance, highway signs, website. So the $2,000 is critical. Something Sabara has been involved with is we've had 2 fairly visible businesses changed hands this summer. The Nest Egg, which is our famous ice cream shop, Dale and Gord finally retired, and they've sold that, and it's going to continue as a business. And Sunny Acres, which is a resort out on Haskins Point, has changed hands. And so we're in contact with them. We're going to try to do everything we can to help them get through. Sunny Acres, which rents cabins, actually has had one of their best summers because people literally come out of the city, you know, and they're renting these little cabins where they can hang out. So it's it's been good that way. The dock, you talked about the ramp. The ramp in Sealy's Bay has been constantly busy. People are coming out of the cities, coming to Sealy's Bay where they can access 4 lakes. And, you know, we weren't a satellite office this year for La Boat. We certainly probably had 10 La Boats in overnight, but, you know, we can understand that. But, you know, the dock is important and it worked well. What we're asking for this year, of course, is the $2,000, which I've mentioned. And Vanessa, I've missed one of our very important asks. So if you could add this to our list, is the pavilion in Centennial Park. As you know, the TP, you either hated it or loved it, had to come down a couple of years ago. It was deemed unsafe, and the township committed that they would replace it. It was moved from that year's budget to next year's. We're hoping that the township keeps it on their radar and that Kim can successfully get a grant for that. Because, you know, the park is a gem. It's like you're, you know, the gem behind the houses. Signs. Everybody's got their entrance signs, which is great. MTO is not cooperating with us at all. I'm hoping that.
That's why I'm up right now.
Oh, good.
I literally just got a meeting request from MTO this morning. So I will have some answers for you, Miss Sweet.
Wow. Go. And hopefully the wayfinding signs, I hear what Kim's talking about with the budget, but it is true. We need the signs that say, this is where the washrooms are, this is where the ramp or the park is. So we need more than the, you know, wash your hands signs, but I get it. The libraries, I think the library, mentioning it again, because there are going to be students that are going to be learning remotely at home, you know, having a place to go and study is important. So to keep those libraries open, I know they've done a good job. Lansdowne Library's been open a long time, but they are important. The housekeeping, which is important in what you said about the grass cutting, the removal of garbage. If we go into a second wave, hopefully not, I'm hoping that next spring the township staff will at least see that coming. This year, I can, they were pulling things together out of their whatever it's called. But next year, to get that garbage removed and the grass mowed is important. I mean, it's so visible. And also for safety, washrooms, again. The installation at the ladder at the point, it's interesting, the Haskins Point has been busy all summer. We're hoping that when the township takes the ladder out, if it needs any kind of repairs, it's done over the winter so that as soon as legally possible, we can get it back in the water, because it's really important. I've just mentioned pickleball was starting to take off at the park, and we'd like some lines on the tennis court. And the last request is those wrought iron. We have trees in the Centennial Park that we put wrought iron fences around, and I'm guilty of that, to commemorate someone. And they're now really damaging the trees. They need to be removed. So I hound Kim every once in a while. Coming off today. Are you women just cheap? You're hot today. Thank you. Right. Okay.
We might not have much after that, so don't get your hopes up. Well, yeah, we'll wait till see what you have on your list.
Might be it for the year. Yes, and is like Wendy. We look forward to when we can be a participant in this strategic plan. The last thing is we had some properties in Sillies Bay that were horrendous, and thanks to the township planning staff and the bylaw enforcer, a couple of them have definitely been improved. Of course, we always have more, but we've appreciated that enforcement of the bylaws. It does not go unnoticed. So that is my presentation. If there's any questions. Wendy, we do have a couple of porta potties that came in July in Sillies Bay, so I think that's a worthwhile conversation. One at the point and one down at the main dock, but they didn't come in until July, so it's something we could talk about. But they're appreciated.
I think that because of COVID, the problem was definitely magnified because there were nobody was open to the public, or they were limited to who they were open to, and it just underscores that having some rules and regulations around it, or expectations of maintenance and that sort of thing, is a worthwhile discussion, I think, for sure. Before I go any further, just to your point, Peggy, in regards to property standards, I am happy to report, and I'm sure Kim would back me up on this, that we are taking an active stance in the municipality to try and work with property owners to clean things up. The previous council had a different view on it. They had unless we receive a complaint, we're not going to say anything. But I think that just in knowing a few of the situations that we've come across, there's some serious mental health issues with some individuals who are struggling with this problem. And the good news is that by us trying to enforce our bylaws as they are, we've been able to help or get some people some help with their challenges through other agencies, not us. But we are actively managing that. Our bylaw officer, Nicole Shorts, is going out and seeing things. And the other thing I will also mention is that our building department has been extremely busy because during COVID, all the illegal building that was happening without building permits, we've one of our building officers, if you will, Ken, has been out and he's given people their marching orders that they have to come in and get their building permits because we want to make sure things are built to correct standards and for safety purposes. And the good news is 90% of people are coming in and complying right away. We only have a few that are challenges, but all of that comes together with making sure that the municipality looks its best. And, different people have different varying ideas of what neat and tidy is. But I know that we've had a number of issues even here in the village of Lansdowne that have been dealt with, but OPP were involved. Like, it's not super simple. It's just saying, come in and clean up your stuff. It sometimes takes time, and we appreciate your patience, but good things take time. So there. Sorry, you had...
Yeah, I was just wondering, are the regulations different then for the porta potties than they are for the washrooms?
Sorry, you said...
So the cleaning regulations, so you can put a porta potty there even though your washrooms aren't open?
Oh, no,
because
I
of
think
this-
the regulations are still the same, depending on who puts them there and who's responsible for them. But we didn't put any porta potties out, did we? We put out two. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So it's not an alternative?
Actually, yeah, no, it could be an alternative. The what we did this year is the two that we put out were in direct response to wads of toilet paper being found kind of stuffed alongside these particular areas, or observation that there were many gentlemen taking advantage of the greenery. So we particularly we put two porta potties out this summer, but we maintained them to the same standard that we maintained our public washrooms when we were able to open them. So they were cleaned every 2 hours, same as the Furnace Falls washroom or Centennial Park or Jerry Park. So it was that hit our max capacity that allowed our staff, basically, we had to adjust all the timers on those. Now the only thing with the porta potties, of course, is that we were only able to staff for 7.5 hours a day. And our public washrooms, after they had the last cleaning, were timed such as that they were open for 2 hours and then locked. So we could maintain that 2-hour recommendation from the health unit. That was the only caveat with the porta potties, is that we weren't able to lock them, but we had it timed so that our staff was able to depart here, hit every washroom. We had all the doors open just in time for cleaning to maintain that 2 hours. So
Sorry, quick comment. I probably nobody wants to talk about washrooms, but it's such a huge issue in every community. I understand the every 2-hour cleaning thing, and it makes sense if you're in High Park or you're in downtown Ottawa or whatever. But Little Lyndhurst, there may be no one uses that washroom in that 2-hour time frame. And in fact, it's almost a complete waste of resources. So I'm wondering if there isn't some practical way to do a count, to make it a count thing. Because if you know that the washroom in Lyndhurst gets used on average 5 times a day, then really you're wasting staff resources.
Maybe this is a conversation for me to bring up with the health unit in regards to the expectations, because it's a recommendation, it's not a requirement. But we also, from a risk point of view, as the municipality, want to make sure that we are not opening ourselves up for somebody to turn around and say, well, we got COVID from your bathroom.
Yeah.
It sounds ludicrous, but this is the way that we have to think. But your point is well taken, that in smaller areas, we're not seeing the volume that you would see even in Gananoque, or in any of the larger centers like Kingston or Brockville. But like I said, everything was underscored because of COVID, because people weren't letting people in their restaurants. Some restaurants weren't even letting their patrons use, because unless they absolutely had to, right? Like they were just there for takeout, so they weren't necessarily open to the public. So there was all those sorts of things. But I think during COVID, we've all just tried to adapt the best way we can, try to do what we can with resources that we have. But as time wears on, there is that reasonability factor, which I think is something that I can bring up with the health unit. Okay, so next on the list is Lyndhurst.
Alrighty, can't get on my thing here. Don't know what I'm doing wrong, but it keeps telling me I've got the wrong code. But anyway, I'll read it from here. Very, very little's been happening in Lyndhurst. I hate to tell you. The average age of our committee members is well over 65. And so there just has not been a whole lot going on. People are nervous about COVID. There are not things that needed to be done necessarily as a group. So there were several things that got done by individuals. Jack and Martha Harvey mostly went out and cut the park at 504 on the other side of the bridge. Lots of people were picking up garbage and cleaning up and that sort of thing as they went along. So it got done. Unfortunately, it didn't get done that well. And so we're looking forward to a time when the township can jump back in and do the regular grass maintenance and that sort of thing. So COVID has had a tremendous impact. We haven't had any meetings at all. We did have a couple of get-togethers, but they were well masked and they were distance and they were outdoors. And one of them was to augment our planters with perennials. So we have a new few people on our committee who have decided they've got the energy to put into doing perennials in our boxes and sort of trying to have something going for longer periods of time so that at the end of the summer when the annuals die off, we've still got things that are showy for the winter time. So we're working on that. So please let your people know not to rip everything out of our flower boxes. Thank you very much. The $2,000 course is very much appreciated, especially in our little community where our major fundraiser is our plant sale. And our plant sale amount is less than $1,000 on average. So I was quite impressed when I heard Peter's, the amount of money that you bring in on your plant sale. So we used it mostly $1,300 for our insurance, and then the rest of it is used for different things, admin things for our group. One of the things we wanted to do this year, and we will do it as soon as the whole COVID thing dies down, is get a bunch of signs that say this is another great event by the LRC, so that people have an understanding of what the LRC really does. Because I think, you know, we lack membership. In fact, we lack a chair. At the moment, we don't have a chair. So we're really trying to encourage people to come back into the group, and we need some new blood and some young, you know. So having said that, our red chair project is still in evidence. We've had several people come to me this summer and ask for the paint. So I'm happy to say that we've had new neighbors move in and they've wanted a red chair. And we've heard from tourists who come into the village and make comments like, oh, I just want to move here and have a red chair on my front lawn. So, you know, obviously it's had an impact, and I think it's cheerful, and, you know, it's working. But that's it. We really haven't done much. We did put in flowers around our turkey sculpture down in Furnace Falls, which has been very well received. It didn't go in till the end of the season, and it was in place for the Santa Claus parade, and then it was just, you know, there was just raw dirt around it. So this summer when we were putting the perennials into the pots, we added some perennials into that garden. So it's starting to show. So for 2021, we are hoping to have the Furnace Falls phase 19, does it say, continue. Just keep going on that vein. And we would like to have the wetland lookout. We're looking at, I don't know if anybody else knows about this, but we're looking at a wetland lookout at the bottom of Jonas Street where we have the children's playground and the other end of the walkway that comes from Furnace Falls Park. So we want to really magnify that as a tourist walk. It's a really pretty walk anyway. Unfortunately, we still have a lot of private docks in down there that are an issue, which I'll just drop that bomb on you and leave it.
I'll talk to you afterwards about that.
Thank you. So having said that, it's a very important thing for us. There aren't a lot of things that we were asking for. So we have money in the bank and we don't have plans for a lot of that money. So we've upped the ante and we've decided that what we were offering last year was $8,000 to complete the project. And I think that the projected amount was $18,000. So we felt that if we were offering $8,000, we were coming close to halfway. However, The committee got together virtually last week, and we talked about increasing that amount because it's such an important project, and because we have the money in the budget, and because we know funds are lacking in a lot of, for a lot of these projects, we've upped the ante to $15,000 from our bank account. So if it's an $18,000 project, which by now is probably a $21,000 or $22,000 or
Price of
$25,000.
lumber has gone up extent.
Yeah,
But
exactly. If you can
conversation
get
with
it,
that
if you
too.
can get it, yeah. So anyway, that is not so much a request as we're offering. We would also really appreciate 405 Lyndhurst Road to be made into some usable parkland. People use it anyway, and if the grass isn't cut, we have a lot of concerns about ticks. There have been a lot of tick issues in the community, and I'm a little nervous, Mel having had Lyme disease. Yeah, quite seriously. People are really quite nervous about the whole tick thing, so we have to make sure that that lawn is cut. So Jack Harvey does that for free and never tells anyone, just goes over there and cuts the grass and trims everything. But if that could become proper township parkland, that would be great. And that is on the Sealy's Bay side of the bridge. So as you're coming into the community, it's on the right-hand side, just below the church. Where they did the dig, yeah. So there are a few things that, a few conversations around that interpretive signage and so on. Anyway, even if it's just cleaned up and made into a nice usable park space, that would be a bonus. Signage, yes, we agree. We're not in quite the same position as everyone else because our little parkette is quite visible. The one thing that people don't seem to recognize is that the walkway goes all the way around, because with the private docks being there, as soon as they get onto the walkway, they automatically assume they're on private property and they kind of back off and come back out. So we keep trying to say to people, no, it's public, So, that's an issue. Washrooms, as discussed, it's been a huge issue for us, unfortunately, because we are a fishing community. People tend to stop at the bottom of Highway 15 and pick up a coffee and then just whip up to Lyndhurst and get ready to go out in their boat. And guess what? All of the people across can see them very clearly standing behind the locked washroom going to the bathroom. So we have concerns about... First of all, we have concerns about indecent exposure because we have a couple of families with little girls that regularly walk along that walkway. And so that's why I'm saying, do we really have to, 2 hours, really? So that's an issue for us. Trying to think if there's anything else. I don't think there was anything else. Oh, the library hours. We would like to see the library hours maintained. It's very important in Lyndhurst. I mean, it's very important everywhere, but it's very important in Lyndhurst where we don't have any other community buildings. The library tends to be a hub for young moms and students and even seniors. So it is an important part of our village.
Any further questions for Lyndhurst? Go ahead, Wendy.
I've had the opportunity to be through Lyndhurst a few times this summer, quite a few actually, and I've noticed a lot of for sale signs and a lot of sold signs.
Well, let me just tell you, we've had a little mini boom on real estate because there were a couple of houses that went up for what local community members thought were absolutely ridiculous prices, and they sold in short order. So I just got notification yesterday that one that I worked on, that everybody said to me, oh, there's no way they're not going to get that for that house, is sold. And and that's less than a month before it went on the market. I mean, some of these houses are going on. I can think of one that went on in the early spring that went on the market at a price that everyone said was absolutely ridiculous. And they had 3 offers the first showings after the first night, the first open night.
What happened to the church?
The church has been sold. The church at 405 on the Sealy's Bay side has been sold, but we don't know what's going on. Nothing's been done. We never see anybody. We're not sure what's going on. The other church apparently is for sale, but there's no for sale sign, no indication of who you would contact if you were interested in buying it. And we get comments all the time from people coming in to town. One of the problem properties that we have, and we do have a number of problem properties, unfortunately in Lyndhurst, is the original grocery store, which apparently is for sale, but no one seems to be able to get in touch with anyone about buying. We've had several people ask community members, you know, is it for sale? We say yes. They say, how do I get in touch with them? And there doesn't seem to be any way to get in touch with them. So it's a problem because it continues to be an eyesore. It continues to have open windows that animals are going in and out of. So in spite of having spoken to bylaw enforcement, it continues to be a pretty significant problem, right on the main corner in the village. So, you know, unfortunately, that's what happens in little communities like ours, where there really are only 3 businesses on our main street, you know, 4 businesses, including the little antique store. So Wings has done well. They've been busy, and, you know, it's good. But there certainly is a lot of room for improvement. I was glad to hear you mention, Madam Mayor, that the bylaw enforcement is not just complaints driven, because no one in our community wants to rat out their neighbor. But everyone in their community, several members of the committee contacted me before I came to this meeting and said, you tell them blah, da, 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 about property standards. And we have a lot of issues with property standards, and no one wants to rat out their neighbor. So we really need Nicole to do her thing and drive around and be proactive.
Well, the other thing that people need to be extremely aware of is that if there is a complaint made in regards to any property, we do not divulge who made the complaint. So it could be from someone from Lansdowne that has seen something in Sealy's Bay that says, that looks terrible, you should do something about it. And we, under law, are not allowed to divulge who
No, and I understand that, but the problem is when there's one house and there's only one house next to it or one house across the street, it's pretty obvious who's doing the complaining quite often. And sometimes it lets slip, you know, things like, well, when she called, you know, and so everybody's like, oh yeah.
And that's fair. And the biggest challenge is that depending on like I mentioned before, the mental health issues that we've had, there's a couple of properties on Sweets Corners Road that have been dealt with and have recently changed hands, and I know there's some in Sealy's Bay area and even in Lansdowne. But when you're having to call OPP in to back up our bylaw officer, it's a serious measure. Having said that, some properties have serious building code problems, like walls are coming down or held up with just not even jack posts, but like 2x4s, and floors are sinking and basements are crumbling. It's bad. And unfortunately, because of the way that we might have taken our stance, and I would say longer than the last council, that it's just been deal with it as we have to, rather than be proactive and say, are you struggling? Is there something we can do? This needs to be maintained. So the other point that I'd like to make, which is disturbing to me, and I'm sure to all of you as community members, one of our staff members that does rounds and what have you, we're finding the amount of drug paraphernalia staggering. So COVID has some bad hangover responses because drug use has gone up, the amount of overdoses has gone up, and that's across the country, not just here. But there was a kit that was found on the dock in Sealy's Bay. It was full of needles and crack, and it was awful because we have summer students that are going up there picking up garbage or picking up these things and not knowing what they are. And so it speaks back to the bathrooms issue. The bathroom issue of having things open all the time unattended makes it difficult because people end up using it as a place to use drugs, unfortunately, which is a larger issue at hand, and I know is being dealt with or being addressed, looked into by the, I believe there's a group in Gananoque. We've had the youth come in and speak about it. the drug strategy that's happening. But I think COVID has just exacerbated it because there are people who ended up receiving benefits on top of benefits on top of benefits. So there was a manipulation of the system, which unfortunately, I'm not sure how that happened, but it did. And there's a number of people who, you know, were on assistance and were able to get CERB and what have you. So they ended up with considerably more than they're used to. And that if they have an addiction, that's where it went. So, so just keeping in mind that, you know, safety is our utmost concern of all people, including our visitors, including our residents. But if you see anything like that, we encourage you. There's a OPP number. It's a non-emergency number. I believe it's 1-888-310-1122. And it was also used as the snitch line during COVID. But if you're driving along the 401 and you see somebody driving dangerously but don't want to call 911, you can call that number and report a dangerous driving or someone, you know, if they're doing illegal dumping, that sort of thing. 1-888-310-1122, I think.
Could that be put out on the township web page?
We could.
I've sometimes needed to do that sort of call, and where do I find it?
Well,
Otherwise, phone 911, yeah.
And you don't want to phone 911 because it's not an emergency. Nobody's in dire need at that point. So I'll double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's the number because I had to look it up and then memorize it because I was using Siri while I was driving because I called it in recently. I was on the 401 and I had somebody go by me about 180 kilometers an hour. And luckily I called at the Mallertown en route. And by the time I was heading eastbound. By the time I got to Long Beach, they had him pulled over. Now, I don't know if my call was the reason for it. All I know is that he was pulled over and I was because he was weaving in and out in between cars and it was dangerous. So anyways, so these are all things that are part and parcel. We want to make our communities beautiful, but we have to make sure they remain safe. And that's part and parcel of what we're trying to do. And hopefully our asset management plan as time wears on will set us up for better planning with regards to having the money in hand. The good news is I believe our reserves were up after when our audit happened this past spring compared to what we had inherited because the reserves had depleted from almost 8 million down to 4 million. So we're trying to get our reserves back where they need to be in order to address the needs of the township as a whole. So I think that does it for our budget presentations. The next thing on our list is flowers, of course. So Kim, you want to speak to that?
Absolutely, and thank you. I really appreciate the fact that you guys actually all mentioned this through your presentations, so it kind of circumvents this conversation. Last year, what we pulled together was really last minute trying to get something done, right? And again, it was just in response to staff reductions, et cetera, et cetera. I was going to ask how people would feel about a blend of the new model and the old model and how we might be able to make that work in our communities where we might have 1 or 2 adopted beds but again, I'm going to kind of go through and decipher what I've heard, I think first, but I would like to reach out to you to kind of see what threshold your village may have in terms of how it would like to engage if we were able to provide a little bit more funding next year. For example, I know that there was a certain amount this year if we were able to maybe do a little bit more so that, or we could look at, maybe the municipality engages someone, but it's not the 5-day-a-week watering, it's the 2-day, and how could that be supplemented? I think that it's one of the things that I want to look at in terms of an overall review of the park services. So I've had that conversation with our supervisor of open spaces and infrastructure. James Tuck, and we're looking at enhancing services actually through our parks next year, and it'll be something that we're bringing forward in budget in terms of making sure that we actually have staffing 7 days a week, picking up garbage 7 days a week, laying eyes on parks 7 days a week, attending washrooms 7 days a week, etc. So again, as we're kind of trying to massage what that's going to look like in every one of the villages, I will very likely be reaching out to talk about what partnership opportunities might exist, so that despite whatever COVID is going to bring next year or not, that we're well positioned going into the season with plan A, B, and C, so that we're ready to react and that we're not on our end trying to develop last minute plans to go, what can we do, and cobble it together. So please know that I may be harassing you all over the phone over the next 2 weeks as I get my draft budget together. And that was it for flowers, like I said, because each of you actually already spoke to how that kind of worked in your community, what some of the challenges were, but that there were still some successes, certainly.
So is there anything to add on flowers other than what was discussed in each of your reports? Okay, the upcoming grant opportunities. Wendy?
Thank you. Sorry, I was curious who looked after the ivy leaf flowers.
Some residents stepped up.
They look good. They look good all summer long. Was there somebody in Ivy Lee that did it? Because they haven't been part of this, and their flowers, as you drove into Ivy Lee right there at the sign, look good all summer long.
It was a couple that reached out to us directly and indicated that the one up by the road, their big planter and village entrance sign, that again, knowing that they didn't necessarily have an official group, it was a couple that really took that on and championed a couple of their local. We did provide them some support as well in order to make that happen.
If we should hire them.
Talking about flowers, before I forget, I'm going to be in charge of the planters in Lansdowne this year, so I was just wondering if we could have a color scheme before, I think she orders around the 1st of November.
I believe our next scheduled meeting is October, so we'll hopefully have a time where we can decide that. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. They ordered those flowers that we got this year in November of last year? Seriously?
We set up a contract, I think, in early January, February.
Well, 2 years ago when I did the RFQ, we put it out, actually it was in December. So we had it really early. Unfortunately, we had some staff transition internally. So I was moved from one department to another. There was some misunderstanding internally about whose desk that actually sat on. So ultimately I kind of pulled up my pants and did it anyways, but it was a little bit later in the year. I think it was January or February, just to make sure that it got done. But we did follow the color scheme that was discussed at this table.
So that will be on, the color scheme will be on next meeting's agenda. Okay. So upcoming grant opportunities.
There are only two that I actually have on my radar at this moment. And one is there's a new seniors grant that was just announced for programming. We do actually have a pending application right now with I think it's the provincial government for a seniors grant to do like a virtual senior center sort of, where we would mail out a calendar. There would be a list of programs that would be done by phone, by internet. We really wanted to try to see how we could augment with some face-to-face, because this is one of the things, again, I guess, as we've kind of had the budget discussions today. So there's another round of seniors grants out right now, recognizing that our populations are aging a little bit. If you have any ideas or suggestions or recommendations for programs that we could develop, one of the key concerns that we have here really is that social isolation, right? And when we're not having events, or like the Lansdowne Seniors Group, I don't believe is meeting regularly yet. We need to find other ways to engage or connect with some of the vulnerable members of our community. So even if that's hiring an ambassador again and having them do door-to-door visits, for example, or look for other opportunities or what might work in your community, I'd be really interested in working alongside with you to develop something that touches on all four corners of our municipality. The other grant opportunity, and I may have circulated this one earlier, is the Ontario Petroleum Foundation COVID Resiliency Grant. They had 2 intakes this fall, the first being September 3rd. It was a really tight deadline from when they announced, but they do have another deadline coming up in early December, if I'm not mistaken. And I can bring more detail to the October meeting if anyone's interested. But really the premise of this particular funding round, Trillium Foundation has kind of done away with some of their other programs. It's really about supporting not-for-profits, social service delivery agencies, so organizations like our Lions Clubs, our Legions, organizations such as yourself, because we recognize that there's been such a significant impact on fundraising over the last year. Plant sale being the key example, right? So again, if there's something that we can come up with collaboratively that will support not only your organizations, but maybe some of the other not-for-profit organizations that you see struggling in your community, and maybe it's something that we do where it's about facilitation of online or remote meetings. Maybe it's how do we recruit new volunteers that, again, that might not have the same vulnerabilities to COVID exposure, for example. So again, people who have compromised immune systems, the elderly, people who have asthma, for example. So again, how do we kind of round out our teams, or are there other support mechanisms like a volunteer support network or something that we can pitch? So anyways, I'm just kind of throwing it out there for your contemplation. That deadline in particular, as mentioned, isn't until December. So we could certainly do a working group meeting, not necessarily a peer meeting, and chat about that in a little bit more detail if that's something that would be of interest to any one of you. We have actually very recently received some good news on a number of grants. We've had some luck here this year. I can review those projects really quickly maybe. We were fortunate to get funding from the Summer Experience Program through the Ontario government. We matched that with money from the Ontario Business Association, BIA. I'm missing the I. Anyways, Business Improvement Association. We have McKenna Modeler now working with us through to the middle of February, 100% grant funded, and she will be reaching out to all of our businesses that fall, quote unquote, on Main Street. So through the village of Rockport, the main line through both Lyndhurst, we've got King and Prince here. Additionally, because we were able to leverage funding, any business that would be considered tourism or recreational in nature that does not fall on a main street, you can expect to hear from McKenna. What we're really hoping to do is support small business in terms of developing and enhancing their online presence. So we recognize, again, if you're walking down a main street, you want to know what the store is. You might not necessarily want to go in the window. We want to do stickers in everybody's storefront that identifies their Twitter handle, their Facebook feed, potentially a QR code. So if it's a restaurant, you could pull up their menu without having to touch anything, which is a bit of a COVID concern, for example. We have stores that may have never had a Facebook store or unfamiliar with Etsy and how they can engage. So it's really about enhancing all of those opportunities.
There's also the Digital Main Street Grant that
Yeah.
is available for $2,500 to businesses. And I believe that McKenna has the details on that, so she can help. So it isn't just about helping you spend your money. There is opportunity for further funding through the Digital Main Street program.
Exactly. And McKenna's really good at helping with no to low cost solutions. So it's, she might be able to come out and support a business by taking a number of pictures. We're going to get a really cool 360 camera. She can go through and provide comment on a Facebook page or website or how to use Twitter. I'm not a Twitterer. I don't tweet, but for certain businesses to get their target audience, that might be of real value. So please encourage your businesses to reach out to McKenna directly or to myself. She will be going around knocking on doors. So if you're speaking with local business owners, Wendy, McKenna will be knocking on your door one of these days very soon. So that one we're really excited about. We were also fortunate to receive funding from the Ontario Petroleum Foundation in the amount of about $55,000. We have a job posting that closes Friday of this week, if I'm not mistaken, we are going to be hiring a Play Days coordinator, also 100% grant funded. The intention of this is really to, again, recognizing some of the challenges that COVID has brought to our community. It's about connecting kids with the outdoors. So what kinds of programs can be conducted in parks where there's safe social distancing? But again, from our perspective in recreation, it's about physical literacy, risk management, challenging people to do risk-based play and how to start to determine those risk thresholds, how to make safe decisions. So that program will, I believe, officially launch in November with the program. So it's going to be seasonal. How do we get people out in our parks in the winter months, for example, and playing? So we're really excited about that opportunity. We've had some additional funding come in through OMAF or through the RED Grant program in partnership with Front of Young. And starting in also November, we'll be hiring a part-time coordinator for that. It will only be 10 hours a week to get started. It will go up to a total of 15 hours a week in the summer and then back down. But what we wanted to look at when we proposed it was kind of pre-COVID as pop-up farmers markets. So that when Rockport is hosting an event, Canoe Fest is happening, whatever that's going to look like, we're going to bring the market, we're going to engage local vendors. Now, again, COVID is going to pose some challenges, but I think because we're starting in November, we should be well ahead of the curve for next year in terms of how, again, plan A, plan B. We recognize, and we've had a few discussions with the farmers market here just in terms of viability. And so this is going to give us an opportunity to try different subsets of vendors, find different ways of marketing the market, if that makes sense, days of the week, location, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to use this as a bit of a research phase to find out if we can find some sort of permutation that will work and have some sort of longevity. I think those were the grant-based things that we had coming up. So both upcoming opportunities and some recent funding announcements that we've received that you can expect to roll out over the next little while.
The other one that we've applied for but we don't have an answer on is the broadband connectivity. And you may or may have not heard this on social media, but we have the municipality committed in the 2020 budget to get a study completed, basically creating the roadmap for connectivity throughout the municipality. And when I say connectivity, I'm talking about wired fiber optic connection, which may or may not mean anything to you, but that is the way of the future. That's the only way to have consistent, reliable, high-speed internet. And so we've applied to the provincial government under the ION grant, Infrastructure Ontario granting program. And this is different than what you've heard about EORN, so the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. EORN was originally established to do cellular connectivity, and then they had changed their lane, if you will, April, May of this year to the GIG project. So there was the GAP project, which was the cellular gap. So the whole point was to put in cellular towers so that there would be less gaps in service when people were driving and moving throughout the municipality for safety reasons, for connectivity reasons. And also if you weren't in an area that was wired, it would give you cellular data available to you. Now, as if anybody's paid a cellular phone bill, you know that if you go over on your data, it can be very, very costly. I unfortunately lived that for a number of years. So I have 2 young children with no internet. So now this particular plan, we decided to take our future into our own hands here in the municipality and create a plan to wire 99.98% of the municipality, everyone. And that means fiber optic cable. And the project at Eastern Ontario Regional Network, the GAP project is 271 million is what they have to, and then they've got that money and they're rolling that out. The GIG project, I want to say it's 1 billion is what they're asking for from the feds, as well as some support from the province. But that project in its own right is up here. It's a huge, massive project. And it's not to say that we aren't supportive of them and want them to be successful, but we also know that if we are going to look after our residents and our taxpayers, and in order to have people move to this area who want to be here, we have to have strong, reliable, fast internet. Because it means, and COVID has underscored this for everyone, students can't work from home. We're in a disadvantaged position right now, so we're trying to change that. So I'm very hopeful. Minister Clark is getting us a meeting with Minister Scott, who's in charge of infrastructure, to talk about our application, and we hopefully will have something to report back on that in a positive way. If we get the funding from the province, it doesn't mean we have the funding for the full project, but it means that we have a good chunk of it to then go to the federal government, who is, with our type of project, it's much easier to ask for 10 million than it is to ask for 1 billion. I know it's just a zero, but it is a zero. But anyway, so I wanted everybody to know this so that you can discuss this in your respective communities, that we are definitely dedicated to that. And it's because of our broadband committee that we're at the point that we're at. We had some very skilled, connected individuals that have pointed us in the right direction there. And so the next step will be a business plan. So anyways, all good news. We already sort of covered the projected COVID challenges earlier, unless there's something that anybody wants to bring up from your respective village that is burning, that is a challenge because of COVID, that we haven't really talked about in the presentations. Is there anything else that you foresee? Seeing none, I'll move on to information items. Anybody have anything you want to share? I know this is usually where you tell us about all your wonderful events, but anyways, go ahead, Donna.
All right, since I've been fairly quiet, I'll take a little time here. I just wanted to reiterate on the usage of the boat ramps in the area. We live right beside the outlet boat ramp, as most of you know, and it has been incredibly busy this summer. I mean, they're parking on the road because there's no space left in the parking lot. So that might be, maybe I can put a little plug in there for the phase 2 of the village sign project, that maybe the outlet could be at the top of the list for a new sign to alert folks if they're looking for the outlet boat ramp, they know that they're in the right area. CRCA looks after the boat ramp itself, so there is signage there, but just getting to that area. The wayfinding signs we discussed, I think that they're really important. I know that there's a problem with funding and whatnot because of COVID, but if we have those wayfinding signs in the village where somebody needs to go find a washroom or to find the library or to find a splash pad or someplace for kids to play, they're more inclined to say, oh, we need to go for lunch now. Let's see if we can check something out in this village to, stay here and get them to spend money here. Also, the website that we have, it's very easy. It's all small letters, and it's lansdownontario.ca. That's the one that One Idea put together for us. I don't know if any of you have actually surfed it or not. I've been putting some information on there about the what we call the old hardware store. Used to be Country Living. The owners have been painting furiously all summer to clean up the building itself, and they have plans to make it into a general store. I have information on that on the website. It's a paragraph that they put together, sent to me, and I posted it with a picture and a couple of things. So if you want to take a look at that and find out what's happening. Also, the new housing development that is going to be happening at what we call the Old Ball Diamond in Lansdowne. And it's the area, the green space between Church Street and Johnson Street. There's information on the website about that as well. There are 6 double units going in there. They hope to break ground the end of this fall or early next spring to get things going. So we're just putting up the information. We cannot sell anything for them, obviously, but I thought it was really important for anybody who's looking to move in this area to find out what's happening. I think the homes are small and probably intended more for senior retirement families, but who knows? And I think there's some other projects in the wind as well, which I'm not sure about until I get some information from Marnie about that. Also, the fair, Peter mentioned the Lansdowne Fair. I'm here on behalf of the fair, so I just wanted to make sure that the staff knows that how much we appreciate what they do for us. They provide the tents for the area where some entertainment happens. They put them up and take them down for us. We have the track is quite often watered for the horse races and the horse shows, and using the township water truck. And also we use a good share of the equipment and manpower from the fire department, from the fire services for the demo derby each year, which of course none of this happened this year, but we're hopeful that we can get back into gear and get going for 2021. So I think that's about it. Thank you.
Any other information that you would like to share? Oh. I'll let Susan go, and then I'll let go for you.
Just a quick comment, because the Turkey Fair was canceled, we won't have our usual draws being done on Turkey Fair Day, but the Stonebridge quilters did still make a beautiful handmade, completely hand quilted, queen size quilt. Tickets are still for sale, and the draw will be this coming Saturday. And there will also be a 50-50 draw. So if anybody wants tickets, you can get in touch with me or Martha Harvey. Martha's got a finger on all of that stuff. So, and the quilt's gorgeous, by the way, if anybody's interested.
Excellent. Any other information items? I might also add, and the Canoe Club in Gananoque might hunt me down, but they have found a very, I wouldn't say unique way of fundraising, but it's very effective. It's a toonie draw, and they have raised tens of thousands of dollars. Tens. Well, their draw was last night, and they had hit their maximum of $10,000. So there has to be a winner. That was so somebody got $5,000. And what it is, it's kind of like what they used to do at the pub, where you put your toonie in and somebody checked off your name to say that you were in there. The way they do it in Gananoque is, it used to be at the AMP, you'd take your toonie in and you'd put a little white sticker with your number on it. You just stick the sticker to your toonie and put it in with your number on it. Now it's virtual, and they've figured out a way, and there's a random number chooser that comes from it. So if you didn't play that week, it turns over. And if you didn't play that week, it turns over. And so you sort of sign up to be a bit of a patron and for this lottery, and they are doing quite well. It's all publicized on their Facebook page for the Gananoque Canoe Club. But if someone did it in Sealy's Bay or Lyndhurst or Rockport, you're not going to probably get the same people that are supporting it. So it might be a way to help augment your fundraising. Go ahead, Wendy.
Do you have to have a license for that?
Imagine you do, which we would provide.
Because you're not, in the license, you're not allowed to make 100% profit.
They aren't. It's a 50-50 draw.
It's a 50, and so okay.
But
because when you sell tickets on things, you're not allowed to make the value of what you're selling the tickets on is only 30-some% or something.
No, if you're doing a 50-50, the intention is that. I think what you're thinking of is if you're doing like a raffle or Nevada or something like that, there is a portion that you have to donate back, but you can't keep a portion for, like, say, a building fund or whatever the case may be.
So if you're raffling something that's worth $2,000, you can't sell tickets for $5,000.
I'd have to check on that one for you.
I think. Oh, okay. Yeah. I should
maybe you want to talk to the town of Gananoque, because I imagine that's where their raffle is. But it's a fun way. Everybody watches on the Facebook page on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. because they pull the number and to see if your number's been drawn, and they've replaced a number of their older boats, and which are very expensive when you're talking about those competitive kayaks and what have you. So just something to look into. I might make a suggestion for that. Go ahead, Wendy.
Mine isn't about events. Mine's a question about the grant intake for 2021. Because are you going to be able to put the same amount of money into the grant fund for grant submissions for 2021?
I will be proposing the same amount of money moving ahead for next year that we had included this year, at $125,000 for total disbursements. I know we just closed our second round of funding last week. Anyway, so we'll be taking a look at those, but I kind of suspect we won't be handing out that full amount this year based on the applications that have come in. So based on what that total is, if it goes down, really it will only be nominally, because again, we recognize that the impact of COVID isn't going to stop at the end of this month or stop at the end of this calendar year. So we will do 2 intakes again, April and September.
And the hope would be that we would start receiving money again from the casino here in the next 12 months. That would help fund that. But depending on how the treasurer and the rest of the staff look at it, you know, because that's where the money came from, was from the funding that we received, because the rest of it went into capital projects and some of it went into grants.
That was why I was asking, because the money for that came from the casino money, and you haven't had it all this year. And even when they start back up, they're going to have social distancing rules. So the money they bring in is not going to be anywhere near what you're used to having. And the first intake for 2021 is always in the spring. And then the second one is usually in September, which is the one that just finished for. So anything that we've submitted here, we have to then turn and submit into that grant process next spring. Is that right? Okay.
Any further information items? Go ahead, Peggy.
Okay, just a clarification of that. Yeah, so what Sabara was asking was often just support from the township. We weren't asking for any sort of special, so we don't have to apply for a grant to cover 25%. Well, you were saying what we asked for today, we have to apply for in a grant application?
No,
If it's capital, they have to take it in and decide whether they're going to do it or not. If it's non-capital, like for us, the history wall, we would have to go to that grant thing in the spring, because it's not capital and it's not the 2,000. So if your 2,000 is different, they have to let us know about that. Capital, they have to take into their budget. But if you put things on the other side, like I did with the history wall, then we have to then take that to the grants committee. That's the way I understand it.
Yep. That's generally it. Now, it's not limited to capital or admin or anything. I mean, really, it would just be per grants policy. So let's say somebody asked for a set of 20 new mugs, and they're the $2,000 admin money and support for flowers or whatever. And I said, well, I can do everything, but I can't do mugs through the budget discussions we've had today. But Sabara has determined that we need those 20 mugs come heck or high water. And so you would have an opportunity to then apply for funding through the community grants program for those 20 mugs.
Your basic ask, though, today is to be considered in our budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that?
Good.
It's any
Okay.
additional stuff outside of capital that your wish is, like the lookout, which is why they've put it in and saying they're willing to contribute to it. But if it requires more than 15,000, then we have to consider that in our budget. That's the whole reason why we get here, so that we make sure that we're doing things that are actually wanted within the communities, and that we're on the same page. That if it's one thing to fundraise and bring those things to the table, but if you can't quite get there, it's no different than Rockport Development. They've fundraised and got to this point, but there's certain things that there's only so far they can go, and then we're going to have to put in to help out. So so just so everybody's clear on the process. Any further information items? Go ahead, Kim.
Question, Have you hired a director of public works or whatever?
I'll
It's
leave
got a
that to
new
Kim
reg-
to answer.
Actually, we have, the application period has since closed. Applicants have been shortlisted, and we're in the process of scheduling interviews at this time for the new director. So hopefully, we need to have him here and on the ground before the snow comes so that they can hopefully participate in some of the budget review process, help make sure that we're ready for winter maintenance, including snow removal and all of those kinds of fun things.
So we have a new CAO, a new treasurer, and a new director of public works in the works.
Well, the new treasurer's been here for a year. She started in July in 2019. Marnie started, the planner started in the fall of 2018 when we were first
Yeah,
elected.
Marnie feels like she's been here.
I know, doesn't it? It's funny.
But I've never met the new CAO.
Oh, actually, yeah. If you can get a hold of him, I thought of that yesterday, but it flew out of my head. I think you'll really enjoy Mr. Donachie. He's very responsive and very kind-hearted, and he's already been out to. I know he's been out doing his rounds in the respective villages, because I know that he got caught picking up garbage at Seeley's Bay. So he was out there in one of our township trucks, and he picked up something, and somebody caught him doing it. And they were like, who's the guy, the white-haired guy at the township truck? So he's taken a keen interest, and while he doesn't have an extensive municipal background, he definitely has a background in dealing with boards. He was basically the manager of the board at the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation. That's where he came from. He's a lawyer by trade, and he also worked for Canadian Aviation Security Association. Has worked in private enterprise and has worked as a lawyer as well. So he maintains his legal designation through the Law Society of Ontario, and so far he started in the middle of COVID. April 14th was his first day. So bless his heart, he's not ran from the building screaming with his hair on fire, but he's managed to keep things on an even keel as best we can through the ever-changing evolution of COVID. We've just come back to the municipal office full-time with all the staff as of this week. We had kept people segregated to a certain point, because if one person comes down with it, depending on where people have been in contact, it could mean that we're all out. So we've had operations staff segregated. We've got one crew up in the north, one crew in the south, to make sure that we're not cross-pollinating, because if we had no roads department, we would be in a real pickle. So, there's all these different moving pieces that we have to be aware of. But hopefully, if Steve doesn't come here to the meeting, hopefully we can haul him out before everybody. Oh, there he comes. There he comes. So Kim, if you want to go ahead.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to kind of really quickly go through a laundry list of updates that I wanted to share with this group. The first being that you should have all received your fall recreation guide in the mail sometime within the last week. I'm really pleased to announce that program uptake has been fantastic thus far. Owing to COVID, we didn't want to plan a poor Kara, my heart went out to her. We got the spring and summer rec guide out, and a week later, everything closed down. So she's like, I published a book of lies, and she felt pretty badly about it. So in order to kind of circumvent that, what we've done is gone ahead with a fall guide, and not too long from now, we'll be developing our winter guide. So she'll probably be reaching out to you should there be any events or activities or particular programs that you'd want to see. I would also like to share with you the fact that our fire department in very short order will be launching a huge recruitment campaign. If you have any members of your community that you think may be interested in joining, like I said, please watch out. There'll be a lot of information coming down as far as that goes. We're really interested in rounding out our team, I think. So Let me just see here. I already alluded to the fact that we are reviewing our parks program in our efforts to reduce costs and at the same time enhance services. So I'm really excited to see what we can bring to the table there. This committee may be aware, of course, we have our Economic Development Committee meeting at 4:00 this afternoon. You would be able to tap in electronically if you want to watch. The premise of the discussion will largely focus around our membership with the St. Lawrence Economic Development Corridor. Let me see. We've had some discussions about strategic planning, maybe a little bit more village focused, but I do want to assure you that that has not dropped off our radar. Of course, we had engaged a particular consultant and had hoped to start that process in February or March of this year, but owing to the fact that we weren't able to get people together, we weren't sure what our seasonal residency was going to look like this year and how we can effectively engage people. We kind of took a little bit of a half step back from that, but we have had ongoing consultation and conversations with them in terms of how we might best proceed moving ahead. So rather than looking at a more robust 5 to 10 year plan, for example, but more of a strategic COVID recovery plan for our municipality. So again, we've got to have a look at budget, but that's still very much on our radar, as our CIPs. Again, something that we're hoping that won't drop off the plate entirely. But again, if and how we can engage with that one, we will. And as with sports tourism. So again, we're kind of really looking at opportunities for economic drivers that make sense in our community and play off of our natural or existing amenities and infrastructure. And we know that our green space is one of our best things that we have going for us here. And so we want to be able to take advantage of that, be it stand-up paddleboarding competitions, archery, my personal favorite, timber sports or paddling events. So again, we're still kind of looking to some of those opportunities and whatnot. The two more things, we are looking for nominations for the Bill Fake Award. I think most of you are familiar with that, but for those who aren't, the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville host an annual fall summit every year. And they are seeking nominations for people who have been economic drivers or champions within our communities. So the question is being put to Economic Development Committee for discussion this evening. But if you have any other ideas or recommendations from your community, I would encourage you to reach out. We'll be bringing those forward for council for an official nomination moving ahead. I will be developing a special events policy. This comes from events such as those hosted by our friends at Bass Renegade, for example. But we do recognize that these large events have impact on our community, and we also see it as an opportunity to generate new revenue through a bit of a permitting process. That said, I want to assure you that this is not meant to bring a cost to any of the events that you host or carry out, but rather a way to kind of streamline your interaction with the municipality in terms of planning those events and whatnot, so that Wendy, you're not having to call James about pylons and then call Kara about a tent and then call EMS because you need to have a presence on site and then get a hold of the county because we need a road closure, et cetera, but that it'll bring like a one window process in that we'd have a team that would kind of look at those and then come back out. But we do see it as an opportunity for organizations that are generating revenue, not our community groups, for example, that there's like a launch fee per boat for a fishing tournament or something to this effect. So I will be engaging you as to what that looks like, because again, I don't want to make the process onerous for you if you were hosting an event, but hopefully this is an attempt to help streamline what that could look like, your interface. My last question is, and this is particularly to Susan and Donna and Peter, is if you have any sense of whether your holiday parades will still be happening this year, because people are outdoors and can stretch out along a road. I don't know. If and when you know that there's a call being made on that, to please let us know so that we can see what we can do in terms of offering support. And that's everything that I have.
So we've been joined by our illustrious CAO. Steve, do you want to come to the podium and kind of introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are?
I attended virtually one of the parent meetings early on, so you see everybody in the same microphone. Oh, I'm sorry. It's on? Okay. So sorry, yes. It is nice to see things getting sort of back to normal and having everyone in the same room able to meet again. I apologize for not being able to join you today. I have a few other things that were pressing, and not to say that the business of the committee is not important. It's just I was under the gun on a couple of things that had to get done, so my apologies. I'm hoping to be a little more regular attendee of going forward on your committee. So I think that's probably it for remarks.
Perfect. Does anybody have any questions for the CAO? We'll put him on the hot seat right away. No, unless you do have something to ask him, I'm sure he'll take any questions. If not, I'm sure we'll see him at our future committee meetings. I know that we still have a lot to do before the end of the year, but hopefully with a new director of operations and that department being taken care of, we can take some of that off. CAO is sort of quarterbacking that along with the other senior management staff who are trying to fill in the holes until we have that right person. Go ahead, Wendy.
Welcome aboard, and I'd say I'd offer you a tour of Rockport, but I understand you're living in Rockport.
I'm not far from there. I was actually for a few months. I was living in the little white house, the farmhouse with Erica Normand's little house there.
Yes.
And we sold our house in Ottawa, and my wife needed a place along with our elderly golden retriever. And we didn't want to subject Erica Normand to an old dog. So we're out along the parkway now in a rental while our construction project moves along. So we're hoping to be in before the end of October, sorry. But I think we may be pushing our luck with that. But it'll be nice. And we're just on Vanston Road then. So able to enjoy Rockport and all the township without having to go too far. So,
Good. Well, welcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
So it's definitely great to have somebody who is a taxpayer as well as an employee. So keep paying your taxes. Any other questions or comments for the CAO? Go ahead. Oh, okay. Okay, then we'll move on to the next meeting. Thanks so much, Steve. So the next meeting is slated for October the 21st. So October 21st, same time, 8:30 in the morning. Hopefully we can, this one was a little bit longer due to the budget presentations, and our catch up from COVID. But in October, we'll be talking about color schemes. We'll be talking about further COVID funding if it becomes available, any grant opportunities, and hopefully we'll have an update in staffing in regards to operations, and maybe have a bit of a, I know that the staff in the Parks and Rec department might have some actual numbers in regards to how many people were in and out of our parks. I know Kendricks Park has been unbelievably used, no different than Rockport. Customs and any outside space was at a premium. We had people coming to our visiting our township and our parks and recreation facilities from all over. So where we had the ability to collect that data, we did. No different than Sealy's Bay Marina and what have you. So hopefully we'll have some details and how our season went for the next meeting as well. So if you have any other agenda items, please reach out to Kim or the clerk, to Vanessa, to make sure that we have them on the docket for the next meeting. Okay, perfect. Any further information items? Seeing none, we'll put the motion on the floor. Moved by Donna Dempsey, seconded by Wendy Merkley, that the peer meeting adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed? And